My name is Victoria Sterling. I'm 28 years old, and for the past 4 years, I've been working as a senior data analyst for Meridian Financial Solutions in downtown Ashford Heights. Last month, I discovered something that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. It started when my laptop mysteriously fell down the stairs. They said it was an accident, but when I recovered the deleted files from the damaged hard drive, I found evidence of a conspiracy that had been running for over 3 years. Evidence that my own family had been systematically destroying my life from the inside. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. If you've ever trusted someone completely only to discover they were working against you the entire time, stick around. This story will make your blood boil. But the ending? The ending will restore your faith in justice. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before everything fell apart. Victoria Sterling wasn't just any data analyst. I was the person companies called when their financial models were hemorrhaging money and nobody could figure out why. I had a master's degree in applied mathematics from Clearwater University, graduated summa cum laude, and had built a reputation in Ashford Heights as the woman who could find patterns in chaos. My specialty? Forensic data analysis. I could trace financial irregularities through thousands of transactions and pinpoint exactly where things went wrong. Ironic, considering I couldn't see what was happening right under my own roof. I lived in Willowbrook, a quiet suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown Ashford Heights. My childhood home on Maple Grove Drive had been in the Sterling family for 2 generations. After my father passed away 3 years ago, I moved back in to help my mother, Eleanor Sterling, manage the property and finances. It seemed like the right thing to do, family first, right? My younger brother, Damien, had been living there on and off since dropping out of college, and my sister Celeste visited frequently with her twin daughters. I thought I was being the responsible one, the good daughter, the one who stepped up when life got difficult. What I didn't realize was that I'd walked straight into a carefully orchestrated trap. My laptop was my lifeline, a custom-built Titan X1 that cost me 3 months' salary, loaded with specialized software for data recovery, financial modeling, and forensic analysis. This wasn't just some regular computer you'd buy at an electronics store. This machine contained 4 years of my professional work, client projects, personal research, and most importantly, my own financial records. Everything was encrypted, backed up in multiple locations, and password protected with military-grade security. Or so I thought. The morning of March 15th started like any other Tuesday. I left for work at 7:30 a.m., kissing my mother goodbye and reminding Damien that his job interview was at 2 p.m. Celeste was supposed to pick up some documents from my home office for our father's estate paperwork. Nothing unusual there. I'd given her the guest access code to my office months ago for these kinds of family business situations. When I returned home at 6:45 p.m., I found my laptop in pieces at the bottom of the staircase. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry," my mother said, wringing her hands dramatically. "Damien was carrying it downstairs to show Celeste something about your work setup, and he just tripped. You know how clumsy he gets when he's nervous about job interviews." Damien nodded earnestly. "Vic, I feel terrible. I was just trying to help Celeste understand your filing system for dad stuff, and my foot caught on the carpet. The laptop went flying. I know how important that thing was to you." Celeste chimed in with perfect timing. "We were going to take it to that computer repair place on 5th Street, but we didn't want to touch anything without asking you first. We know how particular you are about your work stuff." The story was smooth, practiced, complete with emotional reactions and logical explanations. If I hadn't been trained to spot inconsistencies in data patterns, I might have believed it. But something felt wrong. First, Damien had never shown any interest in my work setup, ever. He thought my job was boring number stuff, and usually avoided my office entirely. Second, the laptop was on my desk, which was positioned in the back corner of my office, nowhere near the stairs. For it to end up at the bottom of the staircase, someone would have to have carried it deliberately through the hallway. But the biggest red flag? The hard drive was missing. When I knelt down to examine the wreckage, I noticed immediately that the internal storage drive had been completely removed. Not damaged, not cracked, not loose from impact, gone, vanished, like someone had carefully extracted it before staging the accident. "Where's the hard drive?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. 3 blank stares, 3 shrugs, 3 variations of, "What's a hard drive?" That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through possibilities.
My family wasn't tech-savvy enough to remove a hard drive by accident. Hell, they barely knew how to update their smartphones. Someone had deliberately sabotaged my laptop and stolen my data. But why? What could possibly be on my computer that my own family would want to destroy? I spent the next morning calling computer forensics specialists in Ashford Heights. Most of them said that without the original hard drive, there was nothing they could do. But Dr. Marcus Webb at Digital Phoenix Recovery had different news.
Ms. Sterling, he said over the phone, if your laptop had automatic cloud syncing enabled, there might be cached fragments in the system memory. It's a long shot, but I've recovered data from worse situations. Bring me the pieces. That afternoon, I watched Dr. Webb perform what looked like digital surgery on my destroyed laptop. 3 hours later, he looked up at me with an expression I'll never forget. I found something, he said quietly, but I think you're going to want to sit down for this. The fragments he recovered weren't just random files. They were screenshots, emails, text message chains, financial documents, all involving my family, all involving me, all proving that everything I thought I knew about the past 3 years was a carefully constructed lie. And that's when I realized that this laptop accident wasn't an accident at all. It was a cover-up. They hadn't just broken my computer, they'd broken it to hide evidence of what they'd been doing behind my back. What I found in those recovered files, it was about to change everything.
Victoria, Mom said, settling into Dad's old recliner with a cup of tea and a serious expression. We need to talk about your living situation. Damien and Celeste flanked her on the couch like backup singers. Trevor was there too, which was unusual. Family meetings were typically just the Sterling siblings and Mom. Your living situation? I repeated, confused. What about it? Well, Celeste jumped in. We've been talking, and we think it might be healthier for everyone if you got your own place again. You know, establish some independence. I stared at them. Independence? You've been so generous, Mom continued, but we're worried that you're getting too comfortable relying on us for emotional support. It's not healthy for a woman your age to be living with her mother. The irony was breathtaking. I was relying on them? Plus, Damien added, I've been seeing someone, and it would be nice to have some privacy in the house. You know how it is. And the twins are getting older, Celeste said. They need their own space when they visit Grandma. Your office takes up the whole guest room. I sat there processing what I was hearing. The family I had been financially supporting for almost 3 years was asking me to leave. Not because they were ready to be independent, not because they could handle the expenses I'd been covering, but because my presence was inconvenient. What about the mortgage, the utilities? Mom, your monthly expenses are more than your income. Oh, we've figured that out, Mom said brightly. Damien's going to move back into his old room permanently and contribute to household expenses. And Trevor knows someone who's looking for a place to rent the basement apartment. I looked around the room at their faces, confident, rehearsed, like they'd practiced this conversation multiple times. A basement apartment? I said. What basement apartment? We're going to convert the basement, Trevor said. I can do most of the work myself. Just need about $8,000 for materials and permits. And there it was, the real agenda. They didn't want me gone because I was a burden. They wanted me gone so they could renovate the house I'd been paying for and rent it out for additional income. Income that would support the lifestyle they'd grown accustomed to on my dime. But here's the thing that really stung. I expected them to at least acknowledge what I had given up. I expected some gratitude, some recognition that I'd put my own life on hold to keep them stable. Instead, they looked at me like I was a tenant who'd overstayed her welcome. When were you planning to have this conversation with me? I asked. We're having it now, like this was perfectly reasonable. I mean before you made plans to renovate the house and found a renter. Silence. That night, I lay in my childhood bed, the same bed I'd slept in from age 8 to 18, and now again from 25 to 28. And I realized something that should have been obvious years earlier. They'd never intended for this arrangement to be temporary. They'd never planned to become financially independent. They'd simply found a way to make me financially responsible for their lives permanently, and now they wanted to upgrade the situation without upgrading my status in it. I expected family. What I got was a business arrangement where I covered all the costs and they kept all the benefits. But I still didn't understand the full scope of what they'd been doing behind my back. That revelation was waiting in the broken pieces of my laptop. But that basement renovation conversation was just the appetizer. The main course of family betrayal was still being served in my own kitchen, and I was too trusting to see it coming. 3 weeks after that disastrous family meeting, I should have been apartment hunting. Instead, I was trying to process why my laptop had been deliberately destroyed and what my family was so desperate to hide. Dr. Webb at Digital Phoenix Recovery had worked miracles with the fragments he had extracted from my damaged computer. What he showed me on his monitor made my hands shake and my stomach drop like I was free falling from a skyscraper. The first recovered file was a screenshot of my online banking account. Not unusual. I frequently monitored my finances, but the screenshot wasn't taken by me. The timestamp showed it was captured on November 18th at 2:47 p.m. while I was at work in downtown Ashford Heights. Someone had accessed my personal banking information from my home computer while I was away. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what they'd been looking at. My savings account balance, my investment account portfolio, my 401k statements, even my credit score and available credit limits. Someone had been conducting a thorough financial audit of my assets, and they'd been doing it systematically for months. Dr. Webb, I said, my voice barely steady, how long do these file fragments go back? He adjusted his glasses and pulled up a timeline view. Based on the metadata I can recover, these types of financial screenshots go back approximately 14 months, always taken during weekday business hours when the computer's primary user, you, would presumably be at work. 14 months. More than a year of someone systematically documenting my financial status from my own computer. There's more, Dr. Webb said quietly. Text message screenshots, email drafts, and what appears to be some kind of planning document. The text message screenshots made my blood run cold. They were conversations between Damien and Celeste, captured from Celeste's phone, but somehow saved to my laptop. Victoria's savings hit $47K last month, plus her investment account is at $23K. She's got way more than she lets on. Celeste, Trevor says we need to move faster on the basement plan. If she finds her own place, we lose the income stream.
What if she just refuses to leave? It's not like we can force her out. Mom's got an idea about that. Something about making her uncomfortable enough to want to go. But we need to know exactly how much she has first. I can check her computer again tomorrow when she's at work. She never logs out of her banking stuff. Reading those messages felt like being punched in the chest by someone I trusted. My own siblings were discussing me like I was a mark in some kind of con game. They weren't concerned about my well-being or my future. They were worried about losing access to my money. But the email drafts were even worse. Dr. Webb pulled up a folder labeled Drafts that contained several unsent emails written from my personal email account. Emails I had never written. The first one was addressed to my boss, Janet Morrison, at Meridian Financial Solutions. Subject: Personal leave request. Dear Janet, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to inform you that I'll need to take an extended personal leave starting next month due to some family health issues that require my full attention. I'm not sure exactly how long this leave will need to be, but I'm estimating at least 3 to 4 months initially. I understand this puts the team in a difficult position, and I apologize for the short notice. Please let me know what paperwork I need to complete to make this transition as smooth as possible. Best regards, Victoria Sterling. I stared at the screen in disbelief.
Someone had drafted a resignation email from my account requesting extended unpaid leave that would conveniently coincide with their basement renovation timeline. The second draft email was even more sinister. It was addressed to my landlord's office, except I didn't have a landlord anymore since I'd moved back home. Subject: Apartment Availability Inquiry. Hello. I'm interested in renting a one-bedroom apartment in the Riverside Gardens area, preferably something available for immediate move-in. My budget is around $1,800 to $2,000 per month. I'm a stable tenant with excellent credit and steady employment. Please let me know what units you have available. Thank you, Victoria Sterling. They weren't just planning to ask me to leave. They were actively researching ways to relocate me to a specific area, Riverside Gardens, where Celeste lived, and they were willing to commit email fraud using my identity to do it. But the planning document was the piece that revealed the true scope of their scheme. It was a detailed spreadsheet titled Household Transition Plan with multiple tabs and color-coded categories. The first tab was labeled Victoria's Expenses and contained a month-by-month breakdown of every dollar I'd contributed to the household over the past 2.5 years. Mortgage payments, $63,000. Utilities, $12,000. Damien's car insurance and phone, $3,600. Celeste's monthly support, $15,000. Mom's medical expenses, $1,800. Home repairs and maintenance, $4,200. Total, $99,600. Nearly $100,000 over 2.5 years. Money I'd given freely to support my family during what I thought was a temporary difficult period. The second tab was labeled Post-Victoria Income Projections and showed their plan for replacing my financial contributions. Basement apartment rental, $1,200 a month. Damien's projected job income, $2,800 a month. Trevor's construction income, $3,500 a month. Mom's pension and Social Security, $2,100 a month. Total projected monthly income, $9,600. Current monthly expenses without my contributions, $4,300. Projected monthly surplus, $5,300. They weren't just planning to survive without me, they were planning to thrive without me. The basement renovation would create a rental income stream that, combined with Damien's theoretical employment and Trevor's construction work, would actually leave them better off financially than they had been while I was supporting them. They had literally created a strategic plan for psychologically manipulating me into leaving. This wasn't family dysfunction or natural growing pains. This was calculated emotional abuse designed to achieve a specific financial outcome. They hadn't just been casually snooping through my banking information. They had been conducting surveillance to determine whether I had enough money to relocate without disrupting their plans. Dr. Webb, I said, my voice completely flat. I need copies of everything, every screenshot, every document, every fragment you've recovered. Of course, I'll prepare a comprehensive report with timestamps and metadata for each file. And I need this to be legally defensible. If I have to take this to court, will this evidence hold up? Dr. Webb looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. Miss Sterling, this is some of the most clear-cut evidence of identity fraud and computer intrusion I've seen in 15 years of digital forensics. If you choose to pursue legal action, you'll have an ironclad case. I drove home that evening with the USB drive containing the evidence of my family's betrayal burning like a hot coal in my purse. As I pulled into the driveway of the house I'd been paying for, I saw Damien's car, Celeste's SUV, and Trevor's pickup truck. Another family meeting, probably planning the next phase of their transition strategy. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at the warm yellow lights spilling from the kitchen windows. Inside that house were the people I'd sacrificed everything to support. The people who'd accepted my money, my time, and my love while systematically planning to manipulate me out of their lives. But now, I had something they didn't know I possessed. Proof. Documented evidence of every lie, every manipulation, every calculated step in their scheme. They thought they were so clever, accessing my computer while I was at work. They had no idea that their digital planning session was automatically backing up to my cloud storage system. Every screenshot they took, every document they created, every draft email they wrote, it was all preserved in the very data recovery systems I had implemented as a financial analyst. They'd made one critical error. They underestimated exactly how good I was at finding patterns in data.
And tomorrow, I was going to start showing them just how expensive that mistake was going to be. Walking into that house felt like entering enemy territory. Except the enemies were people who'd raised me, people I'd shared Christmas mornings and birthday cakes with for 28 years. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. How do you process that your own family has been treating you like a business opportunity rather than a human being? But what I discovered over the next few days made the laptop evidence look like amateur hour. The real family dynamics were so much worse than anything I'd found in those recovered files. I started paying attention, really paying attention, to conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, to the way they interacted with each other versus how they interacted with me, to the subtle but unmistakable hierarchy that had been operating right under my nose for years. The first thing I noticed was the alliance structure. Mom, Damien, and Celeste operated as a united front on everything. Everything except how to handle me. When I wasn't around, they made decisions about the house, about family plans, about finances I was funding. When I was present, suddenly everything became, we should all discuss this together, and what do you think, Victoria? It was performative inclusion designed to make me feel valued while ensuring I remained excluded from actual power. Take the family WhatsApp group, for example. I'd been added to Sterling Family Updates about a year ago, and I'd assumed it was just a convenient way to coordinate schedules and share photos of the twins. But after finding evidence of their secret planning, I started scrolling back through months of messages with new eyes. The pattern was obvious once I looked for it. The group chat contained surface-level information. Emma has a dance recital Tuesday at 6 p.m., or reminder that mom's doctor appointment is Thursday morning. But none of the real conversations were happening there. No discussions about money, about the basement renovation, about their concerns regarding my living situation. Those conversations were happening in separate chats that didn't include me. I confirmed this when I noticed Celeste quickly minimizing her phone screen when I walked into the kitchen Tuesday morning. She was typing in a group chat labeled Family Planning, a chat I'd never seen before. "Who are you texting?" I asked, casually pouring coffee. "Oh, just Trevor about his work schedule," she said, but I'd clearly seen multiple names at the top of the chat thread. That's when I realized they'd created parallel communication systems, one that included me for maintaining appearances and one that excluded me for actual decision-making. I was being managed, not included. The financial hierarchy was even more revealing. Despite paying for nearly everything, I had zero input on how money was spent or allocated. Mom would mention needing something, new curtains for the living room, repairs for the garage door, a birthday gift for one of the twins, and I'd transfer money or pay directly. But I was never consulted about whether these expenses were necessary or appropriate. Meanwhile, Damien had been given a credit card for emergencies that was linked to the household account I funded. His emergencies included a $400 gaming headset, multiple DoorDash orders per week, and a gym membership he used twice. When I questioned these charges during a family dinner last month, Mom immediately jumped to his defense. Damien needs to feel like he contributes to household decisions. He can't be treated like a child forever. But I could be treated like an ATM indefinitely, apparently. Celeste had an even more sophisticated arrangement.
Every month, I transferred $500 to her personal account for child-related expenses. But last Wednesday, I happened to see her Instagram story showing off a new designer handbag with the caption, "Traded myself today," posted the same day my monthly transfer went through. When I asked her about it later, she had a ready explanation. "Oh, Trevor got a bonus from that commercial job he finished. We finally had a little extra money for something fun." Except Trevor's supposed bonus was never mentioned to anyone else, and the timing was suspiciously convenient. The twins, Emma and Lily, were being used as emotional leverage in ways that made me sick to recognize. Every time I expressed any concern about expenses or boundaries, suddenly there was a crisis involving the girls that required my immediate financial intervention. Emma needed a special tutor for her reading difficulties. Lily had to have a specific brand of shoes for her foot development issues. They needed matching outfits for school pictures. The daycare required additional fees for field trips. All legitimate child-related expenses that I paid without question, because what kind of aunt doesn't want their nieces to have what they need? But now I was seeing how these requests were strategically timed. They always came right after I'd expressed any independence or resistance to family expectations. Pushback on paying for Damien's gym membership? Suddenly Lily needed expensive orthodontic work. Question why I wasn't included in family planning discussions? Emma's dance class required new costumes for the recital. The girls themselves were sweet, innocent kids who had no idea they were being used as weapons in their family's psychological warfare against me. But their needs had become a convenient shield that made any resistance on my part seem selfish and uncaring. The social manipulation was equally calculated. My friends from work, Janet, Sarah, Michael, had been gradually excluded from family gatherings over the past year. Initially, I'd attributed this to natural evolution. Maybe my family just preferred smaller, more intimate celebrations. But looking back, I could see the pattern. Anytime I brought work friends around, suddenly the gathering would become family only at the last minute, or the timing would be changed to conflict with plans I had already made, or the location would be moved somewhere less convenient for my friends to attend.
They were systematically isolating me from my support network while maintaining their own tight alliance. The most insidious part was how they'd redefined family loyalty to serve their agenda. Anytime I questioned their decisions or expressed my own needs, it became a character issue rather than a legitimate concern. Want to understand why I wasn't included in planning discussions? Victoria, you're so busy with work, we didn't want to burden you with household details. Express frustration about paying for everyone else's expenses while living like a teenager in my childhood bedroom? We're all making sacrifices here, Victoria. This living situation isn't easy for any of us. Question why Damien got to make household decisions despite contributing nothing financially. Family isn't about money, Victoria. We're worried that your job is making you think everything is transactional. They'd turned my legitimate concerns into evidence of moral failure. I wasn't being reasonable. I was being controlling. I wasn't asking for fairness. I was being selfish. I wasn't setting boundaries. I was being ungrateful. And the genius of this approach was that it made me doubt myself. Maybe I was being too focused on money. Maybe I was expecting too much gratitude. Maybe this was just how families worked, and my years of living independently had made me lose sight of what really mattered. Except now I had documentary evidence proving that everything I'd suspected was not only true, but much worse than I had imagined. The basement renovation wasn't just about creating rental income. It was about replacing me as their primary financial source while maintaining the lifestyle I'd been funding. They weren't planning for independence. They were planning for a business model that didn't require their gratitude or acknowledgement of my contributions. Trevor had already started ordering materials using the credit card linked to my account, the same account that was supposed to be for household emergencies only. $8,000 in construction supplies purchased over the past 3 weeks, right around the time they'd started pressuring me to move out.
They weren't waiting for my agreement to their timeline. They were moving forward with their plans regardless of my consent, using my money to fund the renovation that would replace my financial contributions. But here's what they didn't understand about data analysts. We don't just find patterns in numbers. We predict future trends based on current behavior. And every piece of evidence I'd gathered pointed to the same inevitable conclusion. This wasn't going to stop with me moving out. Once they'd successfully manipulated me into leaving and financing their upgrade to financial independence, they'd have a proven model for exploiting family relationships. Emma and Lily would grow up learning that love was conditional on financial contribution, that family loyalty meant accepting manipulation without question. I wasn't just fighting for my own dignity anymore. I was fighting to break a cycle that would damage the next generation of our family. And I was about to show them exactly what happens when you underestimate someone who's been trained to follow money trails and expose financial fraud. The trap was set for Thursday evening, disguised as Celeste's birthday dinner. I should have seen it coming, but I was still operating under the assumption that my family possessed at least basic human decency. That assumption was about to be obliterated in the most humiliating way possible. We thought it would be nice to have a family celebration at Romano's, Mom announced Tuesday morning over coffee. Trevor's parents are watching the twins. Romano's was the upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Ashford Heights where we'd celebrated every major family milestone for the past decade. Graduations, promotions, anniversaries. It was our traditional special occasion place. The kind of restaurant where dinner for 5 people easily runs $300, $400 with drinks and dessert. That sounds lovely, I said, genuinely pleased. Despite everything I'd discovered, part of me still hoped that maybe we could find our way back to being a real family. Should I make a reservation? Oh, Trevor already took care of it, Celeste said quickly. He knows the manager from one of his construction jobs. The first red flag should have been that they'd planned an expensive celebration without consulting the person who typically paid for expensive celebrations. But I was still in denial about how calculated their manipulation had become. Thursday evening arrived, and I dressed carefully in my best navy blue dress and heels. If this was going to be Celeste's birthday dinner, I wanted to look appropriate for the occasion. I even stopped at Thornfield Florist on my way to pick up a beautiful bouquet of white roses for her. The hostess at Romano's sat us at a round table in the back corner, intimate and private, perfect for family conversation. The dinner started normally enough. We ordered wine, shared an appetizer, talked about Celeste's plans for her upcoming birthday weekend with Trevor and the twins. But about halfway through our entrees, the mood shifted. Victoria, Mom said, setting down her fork with deliberate precision, we've been thinking about our conversation from last month. Which conversation? I asked, though I suspected I knew exactly which one. About your living situation, Damien chimed in. We think we came across as maybe a little insensitive. Celeste nodded earnestly. We really want you to know that we appreciate everything you've done for the family. All the support, all the sacrifices. We don't take it for granted. This was unexpected. Were they actually going to acknowledge my contributions? Apologize for their behavior? Maybe there was hope for our relationship after all. That means a lot to hear, I said carefully. Which is why, Mom continued, we want to make sure your transition to independence is as smooth as possible. There it was. Not an apology, a sales pitch.
Trevor leaned forward, pulling out a folder I hadn't noticed him carrying. I've been researching apartments in Riverside Gardens, near where Celeste and I live. There are some really nice places that would be perfect for you. He spread out printed listings on the table like he was presenting a business proposal. This complex has a pool, fitness center, and it's only 20 minutes from your office. The one-bedroom units start at $1,850 per month. I stared at the listings. These were the same apartments referenced in the draft email I'd found on my laptop. They'd been planning this presentation for weeks. And the best part, Celeste said, her voice bright with artificial enthusiasm, is that you'd be so close to us. The twins could visit their Aunt Victoria whenever they want. We've even talked to the leasing office, Damien added. They have a unit available for immediate move-in. You could be settled in your new place by the end of next month. I looked around the table at their expectant faces. They'd clearly rehearsed this presentation. Every detail had been planned, from the venue to the timing to the folder of apartment listings. "This is very thoughtful," I said slowly, "but I'm curious about the timeline. Why the rush to get me moved out by next month specifically?" The three of them exchanged glances. Mom cleared her throat. "Well, we didn't want to mention this because we know how generous you are, but Damien has been offered a really good job opportunity." "Congratulations, Damien." "What kind of job?" "IT support for a medical practice in Westfield," he said. "Great benefits, room for advancement. The only thing is, they need me to start right away, and the commute from Mom's house would be over an hour each way." "So he'd need to move closer to work?" I asked. "Actually," Celeste said, "we thought it made more sense for him to take over your room at Mom's house. That way he can contribute to household expenses, and Mom isn't living alone." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "And what about the basement renovation you mentioned last month?" Another round of glances. Trevor spoke up this time. "We've decided to put that on hold for now. Damien moving back in permanently makes more financial sense for everyone." They were lying, sitting at an expensive restaurant table, looking me in the eye, and lying about plans I'd seen documented in their own digital files. "That's interesting," I said, pulling out my phone, "because I could have sworn you mentioned converting the basement into a rental unit." "That was just one idea we were exploring," Mom said quickly. "We've decided it's not practical right now." I opened my photo gallery and scrolled to the screenshots Dr. Webb had provided. "So you're saying there's no household transition plan spreadsheet that projects $1,200 monthly income from basement apartment rental?" The silence at the table was deafening. Celeste's face went white. Damien started to say something, then stopped. Trevor stared at his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Victoria, Mom not sure what you think you found, but I found a detailed financial analysis of how to replace my contributions to this family with alternative income sources. I found draft emails written from my account inquiring about apartments in Riverside Gardens. I found text message screenshots where you discuss accessing my personal banking information to determine whether I have enough savings to relocate smoothly." The folder Trevor had brought sat forgotten on the table between us. Celeste was blinking rapidly, like she was trying to process how this conversation had gone so wrong. "I also found the timeline for psychologically manipulating me into wanting to leave at home. Should I read some of those strategies aloud, or would you prefer to explain why you thought identity fraud and computer intrusion were acceptable ways to handle family disagreements?" "Now wait a minute," Damien said, his voice rising. "You're acting like we're criminals or something. We're family. We were just trying to figure out what was best for everyone. By accessing my private financial information without permission, by drafting emails from my account, by creating strategic plans to make me feel unwelcome in my own home." "Your own home?" Celeste snapped, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. "Victoria, you moved back into Mom's house. That doesn't make it your home. The home I've been paying the mortgage on for 3 years? The home where I've covered utilities, maintenance, and family expenses totaling nearly $100,000? The number hung in the air like a bomb. I'd never calculated the total before saying it out loud, but seeing their faces, I knew it was accurate. Mom reached across the table toward my hand. "Honey, family isn't about keeping score." "You're right," I said, pulling my hand away. "Family isn't about keeping score, but business partnerships are. And apparently that's what this has always been." I stood up and placed 2 20s on the table. "That should cover my portion of dinner. I'll be moving out of your house by this weekend." "Victoria, please," Celeste said, "let's just talk about this rationally." I tried rational. I tried generous. I tried understanding. What I got in return was a criminal conspiracy disguised as family planning. "You can't prove any of that," Trevor said, speaking for the first time since I'd started presenting evidence. I looked at him and smiled. Not a happy smile, a predatory one. "Trevor, I'm a forensic data analyst. Proving financial fraud and identity theft is literally what I do for a living, and thanks to your family's amateur hour approach to digital security, I have enough evidence to put all of you in federal prison." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Celeste, happy birthday. The roses are on the table."
Walking out of Romano's that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Freedom. Not happiness, not relief, but the clear, cold satisfaction of finally seeing the situation for what it truly was. They'd counted on my love for them, making me blind to their manipulation. They'd assumed my family loyalty would override my professional instincts. They believed they could manage me indefinitely through guilt and emotional blackmail. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd left evidence. Digital, traceable, legally actionable evidence of everything they'd done. And tomorrow, I was going to start showing them exactly what forensic data analysis looks like when it's personal. I drove home from Romano's in complete silence, my hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was thinking clearly. The fog of family obligation and guilt had lifted, replaced by the cold, analytical mindset that had made me exceptional at my job. They wanted to play games with financial manipulation and identity theft? Perfect! They just challenged a forensic data analyst to a data war. But first, I needed to secure my position and gather allies, because what I was about to do would require more than just evidence. It would require strategy, legal protection, and absolutely bulletproof documentation. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, staring at the house I'd been paying for. Tomorrow, I would start the process of reclaiming my life. But tonight, I had work to do. Inside, the house was dark. Mom, Damien, and Celeste were probably still at Romano's, trying to figure out how their carefully orchestrated intervention had gone so spectacularly wrong. Trevor was likely driving them home in uncomfortable silence, wondering how his construction skills had qualified him to participate in what was essentially a financial conspiracy. I went straight to my room and opened my laptop. My new laptop, the replacement I'd bought after the accident. This time, I'd implemented security measures that would make Fort Knox jealous. Encrypted hard drive, multi-factor authentication, and most importantly, a hidden monitoring system that would alert me to any unauthorized access attempts. The first call I made was to my friend Rachel Winters at Meridian Financial. Rachel worked in our legal compliance department and had been instrumental in several profile fraud investigations. More importantly, she was someone I trusted completely. Victoria, it's almost 11 p.m. Everything okay? Rachel, I need legal advice about identity theft and computer fraud. Personal situation, not work-related. Jesus, are you safe? Do you need me to come over? I'm safe, but I need to understand my options before I make any decisions that I can't take back. Okay, let me grab my notes from the Morrison case. That involved family members accessing accounts without permission. For the next 45 minutes, Rachel walked me through the relevant federal and state laws. Identity theft, computer fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. My family had managed to violate multiple federal statutes in their quest to manage my finances and living situation. The evidence you're describing would absolutely support criminal charges. But Victoria, prosecuting your own family is a nuclear option. Are you sure you want to go that route? I'm not sure about anything yet, I admitted, but I need to know what's possible before I decide what's necessary. Fair enough? Here's what I recommend. Document everything, get professional forensic analysis of the computer intrusion, and consult with a criminal attorney who specializes in white-collar crime. Don't make any decisions while you're angry. I'm not angry. I'm calculating. That's what worries me. Angry Victoria makes mistakes. Calculating Victoria is terrifying. After we hung up, I spent 2 hours organizing the evidence Dr. Webb had recovered. I created a comprehensive timeline, cross-referenced digital evidence with financial records, and built a case file that would make any prosecutor salivate. But Rachel was right about one thing. I needed to understand all my options before choosing a path forward. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to downtown Ashford Heights to meet with Patricia Hawthorne, the criminal defense attorney Rachel had recommended.
Patricia specialized in white-collar crime and had a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. Her office was on the 15th floor of the Meridian Tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Patricia herself was a small woman in her 50s, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Miss Sterling, she reviewed the evidence folder I'd prepared. This is one of the most thoroughly documented cases of family fraud I've ever seen. Your relatives essentially created a digital paper trail of their entire conspiracy. What are your options? Multiple paths forward, she said, making notes on a legal pad. Criminal prosecution, civil recovery, or a hybrid approach. Each has different advantages and risks. She explained that criminal prosecution would involve filing complaints with both federal and state authorities. The FBI would likely handle the computer fraud and identity theft charges, while local prosecutors would handle the state-level financial crimes. The upside is that criminal convictions create legal precedent for civil recovery. The downside is that you lose control of the process once law enforcement takes over. This becomes a federal case, not a family dispute. Civil litigation would allow me to sue for damages, recover the money I'd provided under false pretenses, and potentially get injunctive relief preventing further harassment. Civil court gives you more control over the outcome, Patricia explained, but it's slower, more expensive, and doesn't carry the same deterrent effect as criminal charges. The hybrid approach involved filing criminal complaints while simultaneously pursuing civil remedies. Maximum pressure, maximum recovery potential, but also maximum escalation. There's no walking this back once you file federal charges against family members. I left Patricia's office with a retainer agreement and a timeline for each approach, but I still hadn't decided which path to take. That decision was made for me when I returned home Friday afternoon.
I walked into a house that had been completely ransacked. My bedroom had been torn apart, dresser drawers pulled out and emptied, closet contents scattered across the floor. Even my mattress had been moved and searched. My home office was worse, filing cabinets emptied, desk drawers removed entirely, papers scattered everywhere. But the most telling detail was what hadn't been touched. Electronics were undisturbed. Jewelry was still in my jewelry box. Cash I kept for emergencies was still in my desk drawer. This wasn't a robbery. This was a search operation. They were looking for something specific, probably the evidence I'd recovered from my laptop. What they didn't know was that I'd anticipated this possibility and stored everything in a safety deposit box at First National Bank that morning. I called the police immediately, then called Patricia Hawthorne. They just escalated this beyond a family dispute, Patricia said when she arrived an hour later. Breaking and entering, destruction of property, potentially burglary, depending on whether they took anything. This gives us leverage we didn't have this morning. The police report was filed by Officer Martinez, a young woman who took detailed photos of the damage and listened carefully as I explained the context of the break-in. Miss Sterling, I have to ask, do you have any evidence that family members were involved in this? I showed her the timeline of events, the evidence of their financial planning, and the context of our confrontation at Romano's the night before. This looks retaliatory, Officer Martinez said. Combined with the computer fraud evidence you're describing, you've got a strong case for a pattern of criminal behavior. That evening, I sat in a hotel room near the airport, reviewing my options one final time. I'd packed everything important and checked into the Ashford Heights Marriott under my own name. Let them try to find me there. My phone had been buzzing with calls and texts from Mom, Damien, and Celeste all afternoon. Apologies, explanations, pleas for understanding. The usual manipulation tactics, but with an edge of desperation I'd never heard before. Mom, Victoria, please come home. We can work this out. Whatever happened to your room, we'll fix it. Damien, Vic, I think someone broke into the house. Your stuff is messed up. We should call the police together. Celeste, I'm worried about you. This isn't like you to just disappear. Can we please talk? The lies were getting more elaborate and more insulting. They thought I was stupid enough to believe that someone else had broken into the house and specifically targeted my belongings while leaving everything valuable untouched. But the final text, the one that made my decision for me, came from Trevor at 11:47 p.m. Trevor, you need to think about what you're doing to this family. Emma and Lily are asking where Aunt Victoria went. Do you really want to destroy their childhood over money? Using my 4-year-old nieces as emotional weapons was the line I couldn't let them cross. I opened my laptop and began typing a detailed email to Patricia Hawthorne. Patricia, I've made my decision. File everything. Criminal complaints, civil suit, restraining orders if necessary. I want maximum legal pressure applied immediately. They broke into my home today searching for evidence. They're now using my nieces as emotional leverage. This has moved beyond financial fraud into active intimidation and harassment. I'm not interested in family reconciliation anymore. I'm interested in consequences. Please proceed with the hybrid approach we discussed. I want them to understand that their actions have real legal ramifications. Victoria Sterling. I sent the email, then turned off my phone. Tomorrow, my family was going to discover that underestimating a forensic data analyst was the most expensive mistake they ever made. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, I was going to sleep without worrying about who needed money, who required management, or who was planning to manipulate me next. Freedom felt better than I'd remembered. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October clarity that makes everything seem possible. I woke up in my hotel room at 6 a.m., ordered room service coffee, and prepared to watch my family's world implode in real time. Patricia had worked over the weekend with the efficiency of a Swiss watch. By 8 a.m. Monday, she'd filed criminal complaints with both the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit and the Ashford Heights Police Department. By 9 a.m., she'd submitted a comprehensive civil suit seeking damages, restitution, and injunctive relief. By 10 a.m., temporary restraining orders had been issued against all 4 family members, prohibiting them from contacting me or accessing any of my financial accounts. But the piece de resistance was the forensic audit she'd arranged with the bank that held the mortgage on my mom's house, the mortgage I'd been paying for 3 years. Victoria, Patricia called me at 10:30 a.m., you need to sit down for this conversation. I'm already sitting. What did you find? Your mother has been claiming you as a tenant on her tax filings for the past 2 years. She's been declaring your mortgage payments as rental income and taking deductions for property management expenses. I felt the blood drain from my face. She's been charging me rent to live in a house where I pay the mortgage? It gets worse. She filed for a hardship exemption last year, claiming financial distress due to her husband's death. The hardship status gave her reduced property taxes and qualified her for energy assistance programs, while I was covering all her major expenses. Exactly. She's been double dipping, taking your money to cover expenses while simultaneously claiming government assistance for those same expenses. That's welfare fraud in addition to tax fraud. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process the scope of their deception. They hadn't just been manipulating me emotionally and financially, they'd been using my support to commit federal crimes. Patricia, how long could she go to prison for this?
Tax fraud, welfare fraud, conspiracy, computer crimes? We're looking at potential federal sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. And that's before we factor in the restitution she'll owe to both you and the government programs she defrauded. At 11:15 a.m., my phone started ringing. I'd turned it back on to coordinate with Patricia, and the calls began immediately. First Mom, then Damien, then Celeste. I let them all go to voicemail. The voicemails were a masterclass in escalating panic. Mom, 11:16 a.m. Victoria, honey, I think there's been some kind of mistake. 2 FBI agents just came to the house asking about computer fraud and identity theft. Please call me back so we can clear this up. Damien, 11:22 a.m. Vic, what the hell did you do? There are cops here with a search warrant. They're taking our computers and phones. This is insane. Celeste, 11:28 a.m. Victoria, I just got served with some kind of restraining order. What is happening? We're family. You can't seriously be taking us to court over this. Trevor, 11:35 a.m. Victoria, you need to call off your lawyers. Celeste is having a panic attack. The twins are crying because they don't understand why strangers are searching their house. This has gone too far. But the call that made me smile was from an unknown number at 11:42 a.m. Unknown caller. Miss Sterling, this is Agent Jennifer Walsh with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. We've received your complaint and have executed search warrants at 3 residences. I wanted to let you know that we take these cases very seriously, and based on the evidence you've provided, we expect to file federal charges within the next 48 hours. By noon, the story had somehow made it to local news. Apparently, FBI raids in quiet suburban Willowbrook were newsworthy enough for Channel 7's afternoon broadcast. I watched the coverage from my hotel room, seeing my childhood home surrounded by federal agents and police cars. The reporter, standing on Maple Grove Drive, was providing live updates. FBI agents executed search warrants this morning at 3 residences in connection with an ongoing financial fraud investigation. Sources close to the investigation say the case involves allegations of identity theft, computer fraud, and conspiracy among family members. No arrests have been made at this time, but federal charges are expected within days. The camera panned across familiar neighbors standing in their driveways watching the drama unfold. Mrs. Henderson, from next door, was being interviewed, explaining how she'd always thought the Sterling family seemed close-knit and normal. My phone buzzed with a text from my coworker Janet. Victoria, is that your family's house on the news? Are you okay? I realized I needed to get ahead of the story before it affected my professional reputation. I called Janet immediately. Janet, yes, that's my family's house. I'm the one who filed the complaints. Long story short, they've been committing financial fraud and identity theft against me for years. I finally had enough evidence to take action. Holy shit, Victoria. Are you safe? Do you need anything? I'm safe. I'm in a hotel until this gets resolved. But I wanted you to know before you heard it from someone else. This might get messy for a while. Take all the time you need. And Victoria, I'm proud of you for standing up to them. What they did sounds absolutely horrible. At 2 p.m., Patricia called with more updates. The search warrants yielded additional evidence we didn't have before. Your brother had detailed financial records on his computer showing exactly how much money you've contributed over the years. He was tracking it like a business ledger. Tracking it for what purpose? Tax planning, apparently. They were treating your contributions as investment capital and planning to report the basement rental income in a way that would minimize their tax liability. Damien had spreadsheets calculating depreciation, improvement costs, and projected returns. They were treating me like a business partner without telling me I was a business partner. Worse, they were treating me like a silent partner while planning to exclude me from any profits. At 3:30 p.m., I received a call that changed everything. It was from Emma and Lily's school. Miss Sterling, this is Principal Davies at Riverside Elementary. I'm calling because Emma Hoffman is asking to speak with you. She says her mommy is crying and she wants to talk to Aunt Victoria. My heart broke. The twins had no idea what was happening or why their family was suddenly in crisis. They just knew that the adults around them were scared and upset, and they wanted comfort from someone they trusted. Principal Davies, I'm not able to see the girls right now due to a family legal situation, but please let Emma know that Aunt Victoria loves her and Lily very much, and that none of this is their fault. Of course. Is there anything else you'd like me to tell them? Tell them that sometimes adults make mistakes, and when that happens, other adults have to help fix the problems, but that doesn't change how much their family loves them. After hanging up, I sat on my hotel bed and cried for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Not for my mother, or Damien, or Celeste, or even for myself. I cried for Emma and Lily, who were going to grow up with this trauma, who would learn that their grandmother and uncle and mother had done terrible things that hurt someone they loved. But I also knew that letting their crimes continue wouldn't protect the girls either. If anything, it would teach them that family loyalty means accepting abuse, that love requires sacrifice of dignity and self-respect. By 4 p.m., the calls from my family had taken on a different tone. Mom, 4:03 p.m. Victoria, the agents took all our computers and phones. They froze our bank accounts. I can't even buy groceries. Please, honey, I know we made mistakes, but this is destroying our lives.
Celeste, 4:15 p.m. Victoria, my marriage is falling apart. Trevor says he had no idea about the tax stuff. He's talking about leaving me. The twins keep asking why Daddy is so angry. Please, can't we work this out without the courts? Damien, 4:22 p.m. Vic, I lost the job before I even started. They ran a background check and found out about the FBI investigation. I'm never going to get hired anywhere now. You've ruined my entire future over this. I listened to each voicemail once, then deleted them. They were still trying to manipulate me, still trying to make their consequences my responsibility. At 5 p.m., Patricia called with the news I'd been waiting for. Federal charges will be filed tomorrow morning. Your mother is looking at multiple felony counts. Damien and Celeste are being charged as co-conspirators. Trevor might avoid criminal charges since he wasn't involved in the computer fraud, but he'll likely face civil liability. What happens next? Arraignments, probably within a week. They'll each need criminal defense attorneys. The civil case will proceed parallel to the criminal prosecution. And Victoria? Yes? You should prepare yourself for this to get uglier before it gets better. Desperate people do desperate things, and your family is about to become very desperate very quickly. That evening, I ordered Chinese takeout to my hotel room and began planning the next phase of my life. A life without the family that had raised me, but also without the manipulation, exploitation, and lies that had defined our relationships for years. Tomorrow, federal charges would be filed. Tomorrow, my family would begin facing real consequences for their actions. Tomorrow, their carefully constructed house of cards would finish collapsing. But tonight, I was finally free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.